Okay, so we have all of our flower pieces made now, and it is time to assemble our pieces into a finished flower. I'm going to be demonstrating the bud type in the video, but just know that to make the blooming lavender, it's going to be the exact same procedure. You're just going to be substituting in some of the bloom units for some of the bud units. Now, first of all, we need to do a little bit of prep. I'm going to recommend that you go ahead and trim your stem wire to the length that you need it. It needs to be at least 12 inches for the lavender pattern to have to fit the flower head and also have a little bit of stem below. But you need to keep in mind the height of your vase. So don't cut it too short if you need a taller stem for your vase. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is prepare our stem wire by wrapping it with floral tape. Now we're doing this because wire sticks to floral tape better than it sticks to other wire. So if you just have wire on top of wire, things are going to slide around a little bit more. So I always prepare my stems with floral tape first. You're going to need to stretch the end of your tape to make it sticky. And then we're going to go down at an angle, stretching the tape a little bit as you go. And I'm just spinning the wire, stretching the tape down at an angle until I reach the end. And I'm just going to rip that off. Alright, for the rest of the assembly, I'm going to be using embroidery thread to attach all of my flower pieces to the flower stem. I'm just using regular cotton embroidery thread. It's 6-strand thread, and I've cut it several feet from the spool, from the skein. That just makes it a little bit easier to work with, gets a little bit less tangly that way. And also because I like to divide my thread. We've got 6 strands to start with, and I'm going to divide it into 2 3-strand lengths. So I'm going to go ahead and do that all the way down, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got my embroidery thread divided into a 3-strand thread. I do this just to help keep my stem a little bit cleaner. I have an easier time getting nice results with my stem wrapping when I divide it like this. So that's why I do that. You don't have to, that's just my personal preference. I'm ready to start assembling, and I'm going to start with the tip unit. I'm just going to lay that right beside the stem right at the tip. Hold that in place. And then I'm going to put a little tail of thread pointing downward toward the bottom. And I'm going to pinch and hold that in place directly below the tip unit. And I'm going to wrap around both stem wires several times. And I'm untwisting my thread as I go to help it make sure it's flat against my stem. It doesn't make any ripples or bumps. I'm going to continue wrapping down my stem, and I'm also wrapping over the tail of my thread to help secure it. So I'm attaching that tip unit on there, and I'm going to wrap down about 1/4 inch. You don't really need to measure, it's not a big deal. And I'm ready to put on one of the bud units. I'm going to hold my thread in place by winding it around my finger, and then I'm going to wrap the bud unit around the stem, hold it in place right below where my thread stops, and I'm going to take one of these wires, and we're pretty much just going to close the unit while it's on the stem wire. It makes it a little bit easier to get it on. So I'm going to wrap that that tail wire once around the unit, or the little bud on the opposite side, to close into a circle. Push those up to get them out of the way. And I'm going to lay my wires flat against the stem, and then bring my embroidery thread down and continue wrapping. And I'm going to wrap down about another 1/4 inch. then I'm going to add in another unit. I'm going to hold my thread in place with my finger, wrap the unit around, right below where that thread ends. Wrap the working end of the wire around the bud on the opposite side to close it into a circle. Fold my stem wires down. And I'm actually going to rotate my piece because I'm noticing that all of my stem wires are on the same side, and I'm going to rotate it so that these stem wires end up on the other side of the stem, just so I don't get any bulging or thickening in one spot but not another. I'm untwisting my thread as I go to keep it flat. And I'm going to wrap down another 1/4 of an inch or so. And then we're just going to add in another unit. And we're going to repeat this all the way down. But between the last 2 units, we're going to leave an inch of space. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'm going to come back to show you the leaves. Actually, there's one more thing I want to tell you before I finish assembling here, and that it's very important to keep these individual stem wires for all of your bud units straight as you're wrapping down. So if you notice any that are twisting around, just gently untwist them, re-straighten them out, and then continue wrapping. Okay, now I'll be right back. I've got my floss wrapped down 1 to 2 inches below this last bud unit, and I'm ready to add in my leaves. We're going to be adding them in pairs. So you're going to take 2 leaves, and you're going to put them on opposite sides of your stem. One on the left and one on the right. And you want to make sure that they are tight and close against the stem. And you also want to make sure that the bottom of the leaves are lined up with the last wrap of your floss. Then I'm going to continue wrapping my floss around very tightly. To help secure those leaf stem wires in place. And it kind of helps when you have all these little tiny florets here at the top of a flower to make these wide circles while you're wrapping your floss so that your floss doesn't get tangled up. And then once you're pretty sure that those are fairly secure, you can flip it upside down and then just spin while you're untwisting your floss and wrapping it around. And we're going to wrap down about 1/2 inch below those leaves. It doesn't have to be exact, you can mix it up a little bit. Alright, so I've got about 1/2 inch there below those leaves, and I'm going to add in 2 more. But this time I'm going to add them to the front and the back. So we don't want all of our leaves sticking out the same direction from the stem. And just like with the bud units up here, you want to make sure that all these stem wires for your leaves stay straight so they don't make any extra lumps on your stem. And we're going to floss down another 1/2 inch. And I'm not even going to measure that 1/2 inch, I'm just going to eyeball it. And then we need to add in 2 more leaves. Now I've got left and right and front and back. So these ones here are going to alternate from the ones before it. So they're going to be left and right. Alright, so I've added in the last set of leaves, and I'm going to wrap down to about where normally you would wrap down, just to where the lip of your vase would meet the stem, or a little bit below that. As any floss that's inside the marbles that are in your vase to help weigh it down is going to get all scuffed up by the marbles. And it's not going to be visible, so you don't need to wrap all the way down. The exact length that you'll wrap down is going to depend a little bit depending on what type of vase you're using and its height. So measure the height of your vase and determine how far you need to go down from that. And I'm just going to stop when my thread runs out here, which is about now. Alright, now we need to secure the end of our floss and then continue covering all these little stem wires here, and we're going to do that with floral tape. So I'm going to take my floral tape, stretch the end again to activate the stickies, attach to itself on the other side, and then wrap down at an angle as you continue to stretch that tape. And I'm going to go all the way to the end. Alright, so there we have one finished stem of lavender. I will note that you don't have to use all the leaves if you don't want to. If you want your stem of lavender to be a little bit shorter, but you're using a taller vase, then you can definitely leave off some of these leaves if they're going to be below the lip level of your leaves, or sorry, of your vase. Now you are not done yet. You may have assembled your flower, but you are not done. What we're going to do next is called shaping. Now shaping is a very, very important part of French beading. They tend to look a little stiff because they are made from wire and beads, so they tend to look a little bit stiff, and if you don't shape them, they're going to look like little soldiers sitting in a vase. Now if you look at flowers in nature, you know that they aren't perfectly straight. So I'm going to go through and give my stem a little bend. It doesn't have to be very dramatic. You can choose how much you want to do for yourself there. It's not a big deal. But you do want to give it some little bit of bend just to give it some movement. I'm also going to go up, I'm going to make sure that all of my bud units are pressed in close to my stem. They don't need to be touching, but they do need to be up a little bit. That'll help cover any exposed wires on your stem, and also help cover the stem a little bit and make it look a little fuller there. Now we're going to go in and shape our leaves. Make some into a little U shape. You can bend some backwards like this. I'm going to do half and half on this one. Now, it doesn't have to be very dramatic, but it doesn't need to be flat. Flowers in nature are not flat. I do not want to see any flat French beaded flowers either. It's also important not to shape everything exactly the same. We don't want to look like we're punching everything out of a cookie cutter mold. So just give it a little bit of natural variation there. Make it look a little bit more lifelike. Now if you're making the blooming lavender, there's one more thing that you got to do. After you assemble, your little florets are going to be pointed up a little bit. And we're going to go through and we're going to bend them so they're pointed out. They face outward instead of upward. So in addition to everything else that you do for the bud type lavender, you also need to bend all of these little florets out. so they're not pointing up. All right, now just a couple of tips here. This is just the standard form of the lavender that I have in my pattern. However, if you want to make a longer flower head, all you have to do is just make more of these units and just add them right on. As far down as you want to go, as far as your stem wire will allow you to do, you can do. Sometimes lavenders do come with very long flower heads, so you can choose to do that if you like. Now also with the blooming lavender, if you want it to look a little bit more full, if you want to have more blooms on it, you can add more blooms into your units. You can make, instead of doing 2 and 3 bloom units, you can make 3 and 4 bloom units, or you can leave some of the bud units out for the blooming lavender and make extra blooming units. So just a couple little tips for customizing your lavender to suit your own personal preferences. Anyways, that is my French beaded lavender tutorial. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I am looking forward to the next flower. If you have any questions, you can type them in the comments below, or you can email me at my website, beadandblossom.com.